Let's stay with the DA Congress joining us for this discussion. This, of course, looking at the Democratic Alliance's Congress that is taking place this weekend at Gallagher Estate. We do have in studio Rebone Ratau, political commentator, and Elton Hart, a legal expert from the University of Johannesburg. Thank you so much to you both for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Big statements. Bold statements. Of course, this cannot be seen not in the context of 2024, which is an election year. And listening to, this morning, statements like pack up and go. The ANC is a party of the past. Pack up now or face electoral defeat. I wonder, though, is this all electioneering or is it a dream that can come true, Rebone?
Bongi, I think one must start by saying that if you listen to their statements this morning, it was all about bashing the ANC. One did not feel much in terms of what is it that the DA wants to do, but I mean, this is just about a campaign for 2024, but we can go back to 2019, by the way, where the DA had almost 2% decline, so they are in a very serious challenge. I mean, look at the most recent by-elections in the Western Cape, the ANC winning award, and that is because the Patriotic Alliance took some votes from the DA. So the DA has got two challenges that it faces: the white voters that they have lost over the past few years, but also the colored vote that they might lose now going to this 2024 elections because of the Patriotic Alliance occupying that space. And
I'm going to come to that in just a moment, but can they shake off the perception that they are seen to be a white political party?
I mean, they've tried to deny it, I mean, over the past few years, over the past few months, they've lost a lot of black members or leaders within the party, even if they try to portray themselves as a non-racial party. But why is it that, and one of the things that you had thought at this Congress, the statements, in the opening, they will also reflect, on where they have gone wrong, and why is it that over the years they've lost so many black leaders who have then went over to form their own parties.
And listening to Siviwe Kwahobe talk about this particular point of losing some significant black leaders, she says that, well, everyone can go to, wherever else that they need to go to. People change their minds all the time, but how seriously should they be taking this?
For me, it's a serious and a huge problem. If you want to even come as close to defeating the ANC, you need to then show, and this is, for me, it's clear, and people can see it. If you look at Parliament, that 90 seats that the DA have in Parliament, does it reflect their voter numbers? No, because the majority of people who vote for the DA is not white. So they should be open and honest about that and say, listen here, if we look at our calculations and numbers, we should be having people that look the same on the voters' roll than people sitting in the benches of the party. And it's unfortunate from a legal perspective, all the important decision-making positions in the DA is still gatekept by white individuals. That's unfortunately so. Look at the chair of the Federal Council, the current leader of the party, the current chief whip. Do you tell me, out of other racial groupings that you portray or claim to represent, there is not a capable person that can take up those positions? It's always you get black and colored people, they only get as far in the DA as being a mayor of Cape Town or being a MMC or a MEC, but this on provincial level. Why not these important decisions? So for me, that gatekeeping thing might hurt them.
Is it a case of an identity crisis? Or is it a case of simply not understanding where they need to be? Because, and I ask this in the context of what we saw happening in the previous general election, where we saw the FF Plus eating into their votes. At the same time, they talk about how they want to attract, a much more diverse kind of a voter, whether black, whether white. So is it an issue of an identity crisis of not knowing where to strike? Or is it an issue of simply saying that you are hoping that the public may not see some of what you're talking about?
The thing for me is that the DA, the biggest problem with the DA that I currently see and pick up is that they have this undying love for what the ANC is doing wrong. And they can't seem to find and say, listen here, this is what the DA can offer South Africans. And then they need to focus on, okay, this is what we need and this is the people that we should be targeting. But every time they go onto a media platform or they at a conference, they talk about the ANC. The ANC doesn't do that at their conferences. They look at strategizing and putting things, and not that I'm advocating for the ANC, but the DA should think about re-strategizing to say, the ANC is not our enemy, we are our enemy because we can't identify who we want to draw closer to us to say that we can accommodate you. Because they portray themselves as a non-racial party, but when you look at the figures, and anybody, if I see it, then there's a lot of South Africans that see it, that says, but this doesn't reflect that.
And I'm going to come back to that
okay.
because also when you think about, and I'll give you a second now, Rebone, because when you look at some of what they are proposing as amendments in their own, book, you see a power, a bit of a concentration when it comes to internal discipline that is likely to now land with the federal leader, and how that could be, something that may be a bit dangerous even for them. But I'll talk to that in just a moment. Rebone, you wanted to come at the back of that before I
just
come with my
to
question.
add on what he's saying, Tshwane is a typical example where an MP who's white had to resign from parliament and become a DA candidate for the mayoralship. That shows you that indeed the issue of color is a serious problem with the DA, because you had people who have been in council for quite some time and they were overlooked because of they won that white vote in the capital city.
And I'm going to stay with that issue of Tshwane, because when you look at Amendment 1A, for example, it talks about how, Musimane Khape, Richard Khatebe, commenting there on the nomination and selection of candidates. I can say that the proposed amendment appears to be aimed at promoting more democratic decision-making by giving local councils a voice in the decision that affects them, the requirement for full disclosure, etc., etc., etc. This could talk to this, because when you look at what happened in that council, also hearing about some dissatisfaction from those in council that they are not being chosen to be the mayor, and that is also eating away at what they're talking about when it comes to internal party discipline.
No, absolutely. I mean, I spoke to one of the former mayoral committee members after the announcement of the mayoral committee yesterday by the mayor. And this person, I mean, did not even come back, as a MMC in the city of Tshwane. And what was interesting, people are scared to speak out publicly, because of how the status quo is making sure that it becomes very difficult for you if you don't agree with the status quo. So there's a lot of members of the DA who was even at this conference, because one of the things this person was saying to me is that we're going to see some people from Gauteng and the Western Cape voting for Mpopalazi, but they can't speak out publicly because of this fearing of what might happen. They might be purged within the party.
And that is a bit of an oxymoron, especially when you think about how they pride themselves to have democratic processes.
For me, I can't see any political party that has democratic processes, and that's played out in the media where people are told to toe the party line when it comes to voting. We could see in the couple of motions, even as frivolous as the EFF's motion was in court, the DA just said to the councillors, you're not going to vote in a certain way. And then where is that thing of using your constitutional right to vote with your conscience? Then it means that they don't do it. And as much as they point fingers at the ANC, they also don't do it. So I can say the country, Western Cape, you just see a small scale situation. What happens on national level happens in the Western Cape. And they can say that, oh, the Western Cape is the best run government. I differ from that. It
depends on where you are, though, in the Western Cape, because someone in a different part of the Western Cape has a completely different experience.
But even so, if I look at the electricity tariffs that people pay in Gauteng compared to Western Cape, Gauteng is a little bit lower than Western Cape. So whatever deficits and overspending they do on other portfolios, they recoup on, and then they say, no, we've got a clean audit. So they try and make things, if you don't know the numbers, if you don't know the processes and policies, then they will now come to the ANC and say, oh, we are the best run province. But actually it's not. We still have housing, we still have drain water running in Kailicha, Langa, Nyanga, Elsis River, all over the place. So the DA tries to portray them as this party for the people, but actually it's a party for a select few also.
A lot of, its amendments, as I was going through them, they focus on internal party discipline. They talk about, some talking about double agents and how they should deal with someone lending their support to a different political party, etc. What does that signal for you?
For me, it signals just one thing, and that's to control and centralize power within the chair of the DA, who is now, she's been there. She's been the leader, now she's the chair. What do you still want to achieve? You see that you could not govern the country. Now, do you tell me there's not young, capable people that can hold that chair position? Yes, you can sit as the ANC also have the Thabo Mbekis, the Jacob Zumas, that they say is ancestors of the organizations. They go to them for counsel, but they are not sitting on the position making. So the DA should then move in that direction, because the biggest portion of voters is now young individuals. Do you see them in the DA? No, I don't think so. So if you want to topple the ANC, you need to eat into that voters, and some of those voters numbers sit with the EFF. So stop, have this, and I call it the fatal obsession of the DA with the ANC, instead of actually focusing on where do I get my numbers to actually get it right in Parliament.
And it's interesting because one of the amendments also even talks about the age of young people and how they should be in public representations. Now, Rebone, when one looks at, you know, the issue that you mentioned a little earlier on the issue of the FF+, listening to their presiding officer yesterday, he says that no, but in Dijobotla we were able to claw back some support today, which means we are well on track to be able to claw back, you know, a lot of the support, talking about how come 2024, the leader that they elect this particular weekend may very well be the president of the country. That was a huge statement to make, and I wonder if for them it could be a reality, and they're basing it on the fact that it might be a coalition arrangement.
I mean, even if it becomes a coalition arrangement, but I don't see the DA like getting 40%, you know. I mean, yes, we know that there's been discussions from last year, you know, with the IFP in terms of coalition talks, you know, and in my view, the focus will be around Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. As we are seeing, the ANC is actually declining in KwaZulu-Natal, and we are seeing the rise of the IFP. But nationally, I don't think that they will really do much of an impact, you know. And I think when we speak about even the youth vote, I mean, you look at, I was listening to the DA youth leader this morning, who I was seeing for the first time, you know, and you ask yourself, with all these challenges that face the youth, you know, where is the DA youth leader? You know, we know that the ANC's got its own problems with the youth league, you know, the EFF does not have a youth league, you know, they focus more on the student command. So that shows that they don't have any plan in terms of getting that youth vote, because the voters are becoming younger and younger. You know, the older generation is going away, but I don't see them. It's just a slogan that they will be governing this country, but that will not happen. And yes, there might be there's some areas, yes, where they're growing. Most parties, you know, if you look at some of these by-elections, you can see by 1% this party is growing in this area, but that doesn't mean that they will govern this country. The ANC still holds the majority when it comes to the township vote, and that's why it helps the ANC.
Would you say the by-election, as just Rebone alluded to, because they seemed to be using quite a lot of that, you know, to measure how things will also be done, apart from the polling system, of course, you know, how the outcomes may just be next year. Is the by-election, though, an enough mood reader to see if you are, in fact, succeeding in a particular ward or not?
No, that is clearly an indication, and it can show you the fed-up rate of people also. And what the DA should be worried about is a guy called Gayton McKenzie. He's waiting and hanging in the wings, and he's got the colored vote, but he's also got a portion of the black vote, because in his party, he realized very quickly Kenny Kunene is important, and he went on national TV and said, personally, I made a mistake as a leader to focus on colored people. He was willing, and people will trust a person more that can go on TV and say, I made a mistake, I should actually look at the entire South Africa and not be exclusive. And that, but now he already has got traction in the colored communities. And now the DA should also worry, because they had Tshwane, Ekurhuleni and Joburg as 3 coalition governments, and they could not manage that. What will make the South African believe that they can govern a coalition on national level? So they should be thinking about that strategies and telling people how they failed in Tshwane, how they failed in Joburg, how they failed in Ekurhuleni, what have they learned that they say on national level will work for them.
And I suppose also looking at, you know, them talking about how they're learning from these multi-party arrangements and how they were big and they're going to try and align differently and all of that. So as you say, there's going to be a lot of questions on that. But there's something else that I think the DA needs to be grappling with this weekend. You've got Dr. Mpho Phalatse, you've got John Steenhuisen. they need to grapple with the big question that when they think that this person may very well be the president of the country, but is South Africa ready to have a white male president?
No, I don't think South Africa is now, and that speaks to our older generation. Because I've spoken to a lot of older gentlemen and females, and they said they will not live another day to see a white president in the country. So if the DA thinks that they will just go in there and make nice slogans and think that this is going to change, the old voter is still loyal to the ANC. That is a given. And then, now, for you to tackle the ANC, you need the black vote. And obviously, who can resonate with the black vote? I'm not supporting Mpho Palazzi, but she can resonate. She comes from that ranks. She has the technical know-how. She's a well-educated woman. I'm not advocating for her, but she knows the problems, and she's been in the mess in Joburg. So she knows who's the backstabbers and how to go about it. But I'm not saying she's a champion at that, but the DA should also now think, is John Steenhuisen what this country needs at this point in time? I don't think so, because there's a lot of things that's still not healed in this country. And when you look at a white person from a black perspective, some black folk would say, but this doesn't represent me. He has got this old apartheid regime idea still in his head. And for me, that's a no-go area, and I will not vote for that party. And then the DA sits with more problems. They can't topple the ANC's 50%.
For you, Rebone?
I think what's funny for me when I was speaking to some in the DA, because I also wanted to understand this nomination process, and they were saying for the first time, in this DA conference, the candidates themselves were not calling delegates, to lobby them. They were using the campaigns team to lobby them, and there was criticism about Mpho that Mpho, she's more of an elite, bourgeoisie. She doesn't represent the black, members of the DA, and that's going to be one of the things that will actually affect her campaign. And one of the things that her campaign team was more factional, they were not speaking also to everyone, So, but the reality of the matter that South Africans are not ready, whether to be led by Mpho or by John, the reality of the matter is that they still believe that the ANC with its own challenges, one thing I always say, if you look at the ANC, when you had people like Magashule, and this is like going back to 2019, people like Batabile Dlamini, leading the Women's League, South Africans voted for the ANC, even if there was that decline. And you go to 2021, these figures are no longer there. The question that are South Africans more tolerant of a corrupt ANC than a divided ANC? That's the question that we should be asking ourselves.
So given that, then I'm going to pose this question to both of you. What kind of leadership as a collective should the DA be electing this weekend? And I'll start with you, Rebone.
I think it should do a self-introspection of where the party is. And I think I agree with you on the issue of the identity. Who does it really want to represent, whether the whites or the blacks? Because as things stand, they continue to contradict themselves, how they treat black leaders within the party and how they put their message out there as a non-racial party. So it will really be, I think this conference is done. We know that John Steenhuisen is coming in, as the leader.
You think so?
He's definitely coming in as a leader. Helen Ziller, we saw that she's
she's on track.
You have Helen Ziller, who's not contested. The reality of the matter is that with this kind of leader, the DA that is going to elect at this conference, it's not going to really take, I think, the party itself forward. We will see more leaders, even after maybe 2024, resigning from the party itself.
For you, Elton?
Now, for me, it's clear, like, what the DA has to offer currently is not a leadership that I say is capable and in a position to lead this country at this point in time. I'm sorry to say that they must dream of 2029 or something beyond that if they want to lead. And they must sit on the table and say, does our leaders that we choose to represent the people in parliament reflect South Africa and has the capabilities to solve the man on the streets problems? Because we see problems in South Africa, then we think they don't exist in Cape Town until you get off the airplane in Cape Town, and then you see the very same problems of no electricity, longer load shedding even in Cape Town. Then you say, okay, same story. So I don't, but for me personally, there's no leadership in the DA that I feel is capable of getting this country to the next level where we can say as South Africans we are happy.
Thank you very much for your views this afternoon. Do appreciate them. And of course, there's a lot that's still going to come out from this particular Congress. And let's see then tomorrow if this is a leadership that, as they say, is going to inspire confidence and take South Africans into 2024, or is it not? So let's see then what happens. That was Rebone Ratau, in fact, a political commentator, as well as Elton Hart, a legal expert from the University of Johannesburg. So a lot is taking place in Midrand, and of course a lot of conversations are being had about what exactly is the Democratic Alliance going to be offering the people of South Africa come 2024. The big question, a lot of people talking about the fact that they still need to grapple with some of the policy positions, they still need to see some of the amendments and be able to make informed decisions.